we're hardworking people and we're decent people. And sometimes we lose sight of that, and sometimes we get worked up into that. But I think the more you interact with ordinary Canadians, your breath is just taken away.
So we're here with Derek Gladue, who is the Electoral District Association Vice President of NDG Westmount in Quebec.
In Quebec. Bienvenue, Montréal.
Oh, merci. So thank you very much for joining us, Derek.
Thanks for having me. I'm a big fan of the show.
This is probably an interview that most people didn't know they needed and didn't know they needed to see, because I think a lot of Canadians who follow our channel and who follow politics, or maybe if they don't follow politics, they don't know the full scope of how our political process runs from front to back. And a lot of it all starts at the EDA level. Mm-hmm. So we wanted to sit down with you today to get a little bit more information about that. And underneath it all, we're hoping to be able to give Canadians some more information as to how they can get more involved, because that's the question that we keep getting asked. What can we do? Yes, they can write their member of parliament. Yes, they can put their hand up during election time, but there's a lot that goes on outside of election time and outside of writing letters. So first of all, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into politics?
Well, I moved into NDG about Notre-Dame-de-Grâce about 10 years ago. So my wife and I started a family. At the time we were in Hochelaga Maisonneuve. And to blend in, I didn't want to get a neck tattoo, so we just had an unplanned pregnancy. And NDG is, I'm a DJer, I'm not a Westmounter. But NDG is a great place to raise a family, and we got involved in sort of municipal projects. Like there's something called a Ruelle Verte, which is a green alley project. And I think my wife in particular got the taste of it. And after the 2015 election, which that night I spent with medicinal whiskey, dealing with the CBC smugness, it was all legal. I think she realized she wanted to get involved in politics, and I've always been interested in politics. When I was in university, I was involved with federally with the Reform Party, but my question to her is like, we don't know any Conservatives. What are we going to do? And she said, well, we know the guy we just voted for. And so she sought him out. And she's a very tenacious person. And within a few months, she was elected to the secretary, one of the positions of the executive. And a year after that, she was the president of the Writing Association.
Oh, wow.
And I was always doing more of a background. So we were really the kind of we ate, breathed, and slept politics for a good up until COVID. I was doing more of the background stuff. We were working on policy. I run most of the social media for our writing association. I handled the website and all of that sort of thing. But after COVID, we had to take a break from politics and deal with some of the family issues. And I wanted to put my own face forward. And after Mr. Poilievre became leader, there was a bit of a shakeup in our writing. And so I put my name forward, and I'm the vice president now. And one of the things I like doing is reaching out to new media people like yourselves, and just sort of making the connections and putting forward what we're all about. So it is a real pleasure today to be here with you.
Yeah, we've been corresponding with yourself. I guess it's been about 6 months now, something like that.
Yeah, back and forth. Yeah.
Yeah, and. It was actually really nice to get some positive feedback from yourself. Everyone may remember we did a story on the misconceptions of the electoral reform bill that was actually coming into play. Everyone was really worried that it would be the death of democracy, and Trudeau was going to make it seem like it was going to be impossible for him to actually be ousted. But, that wasn't the case. There was a lot of, I think, misinformation going on about that bill.
You could have easily done a clickbait title and you would have paid off. But no, you calmly walked through it. That's one of the reasons I like the approach, the educational approach of your channel. And yeah, people on the right now are a little skittish when they hear things about changes to how we vote, and for reasons I don't necessarily want to talk about now. But yeah, no, and honestly, yeah, there is some risk involved when voting day becomes voting month, and so though I'm open to I'm flexible about certain things, but I don't think that you should just change it willy-nilly. And by and large, our elections are generally pretty solid. CCP not included, aside from that,
yes.
not standing. But generally, I mean, I like the fact that we use pen and paper. Generally, I remember when New Brunswick about 10 years ago switched to electronic voting, and then their system crashed. And so I do prefer a paper trail. I do prefer that sort of thing, and I don't think we should just mess with what seems to be working so far. And I mean, there's not that many countries with as proud a democratic tradition as we have, and as long as we have. So I think we should just pat ourselves on the back a little bit, and not take anything for granted. But that's one of the things I appreciate is just calm, let's just the facts. And there's too many. It's very easy to go on, be very hyperbolic on YouTube. You'll be rewarded for it temporarily. But
right, and that's what we found. Some of these stories aren't the most exciting, unless you try to make them exciting, as you outlined. But we've tried to play the long game with all of our videos. In that, yes, the truth sometimes is a little bit less boring, but the truth is the truth,
yeah.
and that's what is sorely lacking in politics these days.
Yeah,
So. So when it comes to an electoral district association, maybe just walk us through what the Coles Notes is of how it operates, and how a random Canadian ends up becoming a member of parliament nominee.
Okay, well, an electoral district association is part of an electoral district, and there are over 340. We don't vote for a president in one big vote. It's more like 340 plus small local elections. And when electoral district association we're the grassroots representatives of one particular federal party. So I'm a part of the Conservative Party. There's an electoral district association for the Liberals and for the Greens and so on. And so what we are primarily there to do is be ready for an election, make sure that the local community has a representative espousing our values and principles. That's the primary thing. So that is setting up networks and volunteers, fundraising, finding a candidate, all that sort of thing. But overall, the work that the Electoral Writing Association does is more than that. And it's sort of an intermediary between the party machine and the local community. And it's a very important bridge. And it's one that allows a party to renew and reinvigorate itself and stay relevant. That's the word I wanted to say, to a local party. So it's very easy for the machinery of a party to, it'll make whatever you want. So it'll make as many paper clips as you want, even if you don't want paper clips. And just to use an example, local example is the Liberal Party of provincially of Quebec, or as I call it, the Montreal Party, is a grand dam of Quebec politics. It's been very, very important to Quebec, especially since the Quiet Revolution. It's in trouble now. And 10 years ago, I could see that happening because it was very good at fundraising. It had a stable amount of members, but no new members. And it fell into the trap of becoming very impermeable to people from outside of it. So if you wanted to put lawn signs up, well, we'll pay somebody for that. You want, there's nobody to show up for a rally, well, we'll pay for that too. You want policy? Well, we got McKinsey for that. And so eventually it loses touch with, if it can't even communicate to its grassroots, then how is it supposed to be relevant to the community as a whole? And what you end up is you have this massive tree, that's beautiful to look at, but its roots are rotten, and it will not survive the first storm. So the Liberal Party is in trouble now because it can't really breach out of Montreal. But its fundraising is working, like the machinery of it is working, but it's not as relevant as it used to. And right now, since there is a separatist, potentially a separatist government that's coming to power, and with the goals of separation, that's one less federal option. Just when we need it. Fortunately, we have the Parti Conservateur with Eric Duhaime. So like that's the issue. Is like you can just quickly find out that you have no relevance with most people. That the machinery works, but nobody's paying attention to it. So the renewal process is a very, very important one, and everything from policy, which I'm very interested in, to just communicating with the press or community groups. This is an important part of it that is a part of the electoral process, but it's part of a gradual and important process within the party itself.
And one of the things that we've noticed recently in a Leger poll is that in the federal polling in Quebec, we were shocked to see that they had the Conservatives neck and neck with both the Bloc. And I believe they were a little ahead of the Liberals, and that's the first time that we've actually seen them ahead of the Liberals in Quebec, heck, at least in the last 2 years. So do you think that, at least in the popular vote, from what you've seen, in your travels around Quebec, does that poll reflect what you are hearing, from the average Quebecer?
Well, Quebecers will keep you guessing. So I'll remind you that the last big turn was with Jack Layton's Orange Wave.
Right.
But before that, the ADQ, the Action Démocratique du Québec, which was led by Mario Dumont, became the official opposition. So the provincial, so there's no real ideological current with Quebec. They will focus on what promotes their own interests. And so we'll see if, and I will say this, look, I've been going, so my wife and I used to we'd switch off. We have a young daughter, so I would go to the Beauce one week, she would go to Victoriaville the next week. And I was always surprised by the people who would stay after. So there would be a rally or something, and then there would be people who would stay after for the, the information session and all of that. And so, although some of our results have been disappointing, because it is very difficult to change political culture, I'll remind everybody that in the last provincial election, 500,000 Quebecers voted for a centre-right party. So there is a shifting underneath, and I think people are open to new ideas and new solutions. So we'll see, but Quebecers, they will wait up to the last minute, and when they switch, they'll just be like that. And in hindsight, it will all make total sense. Of course, that was meant to be. But yeah, they do have a history of switching things up and not being particularly, let's say, politically monogamous. And even if you look at, the leadership, Tom Mulcair was a member of, he's an NDP, but he was a Liberal provincially. Monsieur Legault started as a PQ, but then he broke away with his own party that was made up of the remains of the ADQ. So it's not for the faint of heart. It's not just an easy a cookie cutter sort of thing. They do their own thing here, and so it makes it so interesting.
Well, and it's very interesting because to me, I would say the voting habits of the populace seems to reflect how the Bloc actually operates, because they will keep you guessing what they're going to be doing from policies, but when they decide, they've made their decision. They're not changing their minds.
Yeah.
So when they decided, for example, to vote against the budget, they declared really early with the Conservatives to say, no, we're going to be voting against it. But until then, you really had no idea how they were going to be approaching that. The Conservatives, you knew they were going to be voting against the budget. So that's actually kind of interesting that I would say, even policy behavior ends up being reflected in the members of Parliament.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, when they're in, they're all in. They don't do anything sort of by halves. And so the thing is, though, that I would say that the Bloc Québécois, though, it's like, I mean, we'll see what goes on with the upcoming referendum, but I mean, it was a party that was started 35 plus years ago for the process of leaving or letting Quebec leave federation, and here we are. So I think every once in a while Quebecers want a seat at the table, and even in Montreal. I mean, I went to a recent. There was a big, not a rally, a meeting at a synagogue, where Mr. Polyev was, and he gave an incredible speech, and the Anglophone community in Montreal is really hardwired to support the Liberals. And the Jewish community is very hardwired. They have, as a shape-shifting party federally, they have taken on the mantle of champions of federalism, even though I don't think they're particularly good champions for Anglophone rights. And so as I stood in line, and Mr. Polyev saw everybody, he even signed
Which he does.
He signed my book. I have a book with all the signatures of the leaders of the conservative movement. I met somebody who I went to film school with. I hadn't seen her in 20 years. She's not a rock-ribbed conservative type. And I listened to the arguments, like, so should we give this guy a chance? And so, like, you heard the wheels of people changing their mind, and it was interesting. And I think that, I mean, even when we campaigned provincially for the Conservative, I've never got such softball questions before. And like, people were very disappointed with how the Liberals were handling Legault's language policies in particular. The media I've never had such easy questions given to me. Like, it was just a total game changer. So I think people are looking for new ways of doing things, and so, like, stay tuned. I think we've got a good surprise coming for us.
Excellent. When it comes to a member of parliament or somebody that's just your average Canadian and they want to run for member of parliament, what do they do?
Well, I mean, so back to the EDA. So the EDA is the local group. And so you could be a member of the party, but you're not necessarily a member of the EDA.
Right.
The EDA, its day-to-day sort of stuff is run by executive and voted on by a board.
And you may live in a different EDA too.
Yeah, but generally, as a general, you should just be sort of close by, so you're not parachuted. But I mean, it really depends on the viability of the EDA. So the Liberals and the Conservatives have, I would say, the most viable, as we have been historically the traditionally governing parties. But there are some ridings that are, they don't even have 10 members. So maybe they don't have a functioning EDA. And there's some that are, for lack of a better word, are a safe bet. So, like, there's no such thing as a sure thing in politics. But if you historically win 70% of the vote, then it becomes a seat that really becomes contested, right? Because if you're interested in politics, and that is your foot in the door to a national profile. And so sometimes the party will try to promote certain people in certain safe ridings. But I mean, somebody like Candice Bergen, who was a former leader, she came to Montreal and she told how she went just from a volunteer and worked her way up to become a member of parliament and then eventually the leader. So, like, it can take different routes, but it really kind of depends on how viable the riding is. Like, there's in Britain they use the term a marginal constituency, so like bit of a swing vote. So I look at ridings in Mississauga or Kitchener, where they go, the country goes, and so they can sway. They can have a very functional EDA one year, but after an election maybe not. But the more that becomes a viable win, then the party will throw some resources into it. Not necessarily to promote a candidate, to make sure that they have a chance of taking a seat away off the other side. So it really depends on how functional the EDA is. There are some that, like, we're lucky, like we have a very functioning EDA. We've historically have a good and enthusiastic volunteer pool. And we try to help out other EDAs that aren't as functional. So we invite them in and we try to be a hub amongst Montrealers. So it depends on how viable it is, because if it's very viable, then they'll be competitive.
Right.
Because people who wouldn't want, to work in Parliament. If politics is your game, this is a good first step.
Right, and if the polling is very strong for the Conservatives,
Yeah.
then to your point earlier, that's more of a good bet that
Yeah.
you can win. So you would get a lot of competition from different people that want to try to be the member of Parliament in order to actually secure that spot.
So in my cases, I have not been through a competitive nomination process. It was my wife and I worked very hard for the 2019 election. We chose a candidate who had run for us before, had been a spokesperson. He worked with Stockwell Day as one of his cabinet. Well, he worked as one of his aides, and so we went to our board. The board voted on it. We had to get a few signatures, and that depends. The amount depends on if you're in a very rural or distant riding. Like you cut it in half, and then what you have to do, if the board says that this is our nominee, and nobody else runs against it, then you have to go to the public, and you have to get about 100 signatures. And some ridings, they don't have 100 members. So you have to you'll see a very nice man, very earnest young lady getting signatures from people who live in the riding. Now, my neighbor is the candidate who runs for the Marxist-Leninist party.
That's quite the neighbor.
Every electoral campaign, my family goes to her house. We fill out her form. She fills out our form, and I guess when the revolution happens, I'll be in a nice gulag. So, or the nicer one. But yeah, that's it. It has to. If it's not contested, the board just sort of votes on it. If it is contested, because sometimes a member will come and he'll sign 20 of his friends and family, and then all of a sudden there's a competitive. It will be decided by the board and by the membership.
So that's something just want to break apart for the viewers. So what you're talking about there is that 100 signatures. That doesn't mean that those 100 people are going to vote for that candidate. It's just, it's 100 signatures of people saying, yes, I'm in the EDA,
Yeah.
and, yes, this is a candidate.
I support democracy,
right.
basically.
And that you don't have to be a part of the party.
Yeah.
You're just saying, yes, I'm signing that. So, the one thing I was, I think, surprised when I started, the process before I hit pause, was it was a lot more involved than I thought it was going to be. I would have, if I pursued it, ended up in a competitive nomination, no doubt. I think I was told there was 5 or 6 other candidates that were actively navigating that process. So, and we just finished an interview with Greg Kung out in Canada, who secured the nomination, and he was in a competitive nomination process.
And Canada is competitive now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I used to live around in Ottawa, so it was always a red wall. But
well, and with the riding changes,
Yeah.
right? It's pulling very well for the Conservatives at this point. So
Yeah.
I think they're at something like 55%. So, so it's it can be tough, and for. In asking him, okay, so at this point, how many doors have you knocked on? He said, about 15,000, and that kind of took us aback when we heard that. But that's what you have to do as an MP. Is basically you are constantly walking around and knocking on doors of people in your riding, trying to secure support, right?
Yeah, and also if you are a part of a riding that is traditionally or historically one that swings very heavily for one party or another, that comes with other sort of benefits as well, usually a constituency office, a staff. And most of that work is to be done for the broader constituency,
Right.
not just for the EDAs, but sometimes it's just a way for somebody to know, how do I get in contact with this person? And so that's a big help as well. And but I remember, as somebody who, I run the Twitter account for my riding association. It's got a big following, and I get comments all the time. It's like, where's my member? What can I do? Where's my riding? Who do I talk to? That sort of thing. And one thing I need to stress is that for the most part, this is a volunteer it's mostly a volunteer sort of run organization. And so sometimes a writing will be usually it's about 20% of the people doing 80% of the work. And that one guy retires or moves on, then things sometimes they lose their mojo.
That's
sometimes.
a big hole to fill.
Yeah. So they lose their mojo, and like that's the the dynamics of a sort of personal relationship. And so sometimes if you don't get a response from an email or something like that, just give it some time. But you can always contact me, and I try to say, well, who's your member of parliament, and I try to go there. And then usually the next question is, well, what can I do? And so for me, I have a background in film production, and I went to Concordia's the Mel Hoppenheim School of Film Production, and I'm kind of reminded of starting out in student film. So it's because you're surrounded by a lot of people who are passionate about the same thing, but they have different skill sets, and you've got to negotiate this and try to figure out how everybody can sort of contribute in their own way. So saying that you're into film or into politics is a big country. Film is a big country. So I was like, so what are you into? Cinematography? Are you a director? Are you a writer?
Are you a sound guy?
Yeah, a sound guy, that sort of thing. But so you're into politics. Well, what are you into? It's like, are you we need somebody to help with the campaign office. Are you are you a translator?
Are you good with data? Are you good with media relations?
Can you do research? That sort of thing. And or are you a policy wonk? So it takes all sorts of different, it takes a certain skill set to manage these different personalities and egos, kind of like in film school. And that's an important part of it, and it can be a very exciting part of working. And I always get these vibes, especially when we're setting up a campaign office. I always said we're getting the set ready, and at the end, when we're finished, we're striking the set. And so that's really an exciting part of it. And when you find out. And it usually takes about 5 minutes when somebody says, well, I'm just an ordinary Canadian. What can I do? I say, well, there's nothing very ordinary about ordinary Canadians. And it takes 5 minutes before they realize that, oh, yes, I've been carrying all of these skills all around. And they go away energized. And so it's very exciting to do that. And more important, another great thing about it is you get to meet other Canadians. I'm Christmas cards with friends with people I never would have met in 100 years. And for my daughter, who's chronically unimpressed with my life choices on this, I say, hey, this person has a farm out of Moose Jaw, all over the place, and there's horses here, and that this person does this, and it's a great way to sort of connect with the country itself and the decent people who make up Canada. So
I completely agree with that because, as we've said before on our channel, the number one thing that we are so grateful for since starting our journey on this on this political, I would say, mountain, is that we've met so many phenomenal people. We didn't think about that when we started this, but we've corresponded with people from coast to coast in all walks of life, and to your point, and Pierre says this all the time, Canadians aren't ordinary, they're extraordinary.
Yeah.
And I love the point that you brought up about the different ways that people can help in their skill set, because I think the message to Canadians is you don't have to be that knowledgeable about politics to really be effective in helping the political system. That's the thing that people need to really, I think, take away, is that, so what? You don't know how Parliament runs. So what? You don't even know how an EDA runs. If you want to help, you will have skills that can contribute to, either the EDA functioning or that nominee potentially winning their seat, and then you would have become a part of Canadian history.
Yeah, and one of my I guess I'm more of a policy wonk as well. And so one of my fondest memories is my wife went to Halifax she was the president, and I had to stay home with the kid and my mother-in-law at the time. And so I was watching the convention at home, and I saw two of our policies pass with help from caucus. And so we had 3 that ended up going to the final cut, and 2 made it. And so I saw all the hands go up when they voted for it. And I realized, oh my God, we did something. We actually have had an impact on policy of this country. So if we become the government, so that to me it did give me some chills actually to realize is that was the result of our hard work. And it's very rewarding to realize that you're a part of that. But even that was part of a lot of work within other EDAs as well. That's another thing that often gets ignored, is that you're in contact with other EDAs to get your policy through. There's a lot of horse trading, and there's some people who they've got a lot of hobby horses on. A friend of mine is in Vancouver Centre, and he is hell-bent on a few policies that, and so when it's time for the convention, like I know I got the 3 emails, it's like, I need you to vote for this. I need to vote for the. So like you do a bit of horse trading, but that way you also interact with other EDAs, and you interact with the type of personality of somebody who's plugged in and very passionate about policy and wanting to make a difference. So that's a very rewarding thing. And as I mentioned before, that's an important connection to the party itself, and it allows the party to stay relevant and connected to the grassroots, and from the grassroots to the broader community as well. It's an important part of it. It's sometimes a thankless job, but it's something that allows a party like ours to move forward and to course correct and to sometimes take bold policies. So something that I really do look forward to.
So, the political landscape right now, it's in a bit of turmoil with everything that's been going on.
You think?
It seems that nobody knows, even the Liberals, if Trudeau's going to be the leader of the Liberal Party past the summer. Does that mean Mark Carney comes in? Does that mean Trudeau stays? Does that mean Trudeau calls a snap election to prevent from that happening? Nobody knows. But what it results in, and I'm sure you're seeing it, we're seeing it, is that Canadians are really frustrated. They're looking for a sense to be optimistic. So for those that are looking for a way to be optimistic, they're looking for a sense of purpose. How can Canadians help at their local EDA level?
Well, get in touch with us for one, and forgive us if our volunteer staff don't react right away, but find somebody who's very active and swim in that wake. Show up for rallies. Put your name onto a sort of an email account, because in the last few months we've had quite a few MPs. We had Miss Landsman come, Pierre Poilievre came. So there's a lot that's going on right now, and don't take a lot of conventional wisdom for granted. Like, I understand that there's a sort of especially in the media, heaven help me, CJAD, they would vote every day of the year if they could vote for the Liberal Party. And so like there's a heavy bias towards it, but there are people who want more. They don't like a divisive kind of politics that Mr. Trudeau is implemented on us. I've never seen this country this divided, and part of my family is French Canadian and separatist. So I've never seen this kind of rancor between different types of people: rural versus urban, French versus English, new Canadians versus older Canadian, young and old immigrants versus I'll use the word old stock Canadian, but. They want, and the thing is that it's not a miracle that, like, we're a wealthy country, and we have everything a developing world needs. We have energy, we have food, we have things that if we would just embrace the natural resources and the harvesting of it, I think that would solve and get rid of some of the regulations, and talk more about budgets and less about gender equality in the oil patch or stuff like that. Not that gender equality is not important, it's just that it's not the only important thing. And sometimes we have to, I think if we were to lower the regulations burden and encourage some foreign investment. Like, I really do think that we can do well and do good at the same time. You know, if you wanted to stop the Putin war machine, invest in Canadian energy.
Right.
Like Canada, like Germany and Greece and so many other people were coming here because their own energy policies have shot them off at the kneecap. And they're saying, please, could you help us warm our country in the winter?
And the answer is we're closed for
nope,
business.
Sorry, what, oil? No. So like, I do think that I don't want us to build back better. I mean, that sounds like something you say to a 6-year-old who knocks Legos down. I want us to be on the ground floor of Canada Unlimited. I want us to be a true North Star. And we have all of this. And the biggest resources are our people. And we're hardworking people, and we're decent people. And sometimes we lose sight of that, and sometimes we get worked up into that. But I think the more you interact with ordinary Canadians, your breath is just taken away. So like, we have so much to offer, and we just need to be nudged in the right direction. And we need a government whose instincts are correct. And the instincts are, you know, there's a difference between policy and instinct, because you can't anticipate every single crisis that can come.
Right.
But if your instincts are, I'm going to set up a tax-free savings account because that's your money, as opposed to I want to tax your money because that's my money. I believe that I should be able to tax your house, which the Liberal government is of course denying it, but even their capital gain sort of increases, that's the thing that's really going to push them over the edge. The instinct is that this is a command and control economy, that we know best, and that the provincial governments have to get out of our way. We're sorting this. Censorship is good. Like, it's almost like war is peace. Or like all of their instincts
war is strength. Yeah.
They're all wrong, and it's something that is making us a poorer country, a less free country, and a more divided country. And so that would be my sort of my encouragement to people, is that we have everything that we need. We just need a government that will let us get back to our lives. But my advice to people who want to get in politics is that's not your only thing. You have to set limit. Politics goes on forever, and Rust never sleeps. You know, like, you have to set some times for yourself. I know so many people who burnt out because they're very enthusiastic about it. And that's a shame, because we do need people who are passionate about it, but set boundaries, and understand that politics is exciting. It can bring friendships and excitement and some fulfillment, but spend time with your family. Read a book. Go touch grass, as the kids say. Waste an afternoon. Like, the whole point of being a conservative is not to have a perpetual revolution, but to empower people to take control of their own lives and let them enrich themselves. And like, there are things that a federal government can do. Do those few things very well. Let the provinces respect the provinces and respect the citizens, and you'll find that there will be better, stronger citizens who will be the source of enrichment for generations to come. I know it's dark now, but we've gone through bad leadership before, and we've gone through dark times before, but I really do think we have everything we need to make this a great Canadian century.
And with that, thank you very much, Derek. It's been a pleasure.
Big fan. Thanks.
All right.